Uh-oh. Motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Controversial Olympian Khelif hits back at false and offensive accusations from the IBA, who still insist the athlete is biologically male and should not be competing in the female category. Olympic champion Khelif has threatened to take legal action after the IBA launched a damning complaint against her gender eligibility. Khelif was disqualified from competing in the 2023 Women's Boxing World Championships after failing a gender eligibility test conducted by the IBA. However, with the IBA losing its Olympic recognition over governance issues, the IOC cleared the Algerian welterweight to fight at the 2024 Paris Games, knowing that the IBA had already banned them. Along with Taiwan's Lin Yuting, who according to the IBA also tested positive for XY chromosomes, Khelif was able to claim gold at the coveted tournament. This may seem familiar to the identity politics you often hear about in the West, but it's important not to bunch all of this up with LGBTQ issues and LGBTQ talking points, since neither athlete is a member of that community, nor do they claim to be. Khelif is not a trans person, and neither is Lin Yuting. Then what is this? Some speculate that what's at the heart of the matter is a sexual development disorder, a congenital birth defect, that where both athletes may have been assigned female at birth, they were in fact biologically male, born with inverted male genitalia. The IBA has maintained its stance against the two Olympic champions, confirming that neither fighter will compete at this year's World Championships. They're still holding World Championships? I thought the IOC don't recognize them anymore. Not only that, but on Monday, the IBA declared that, along with Swiss Attorney General Stefan Blatter, it will take legal action against the IOC for clearing the two athletes as female boxers. In its statement, the boxing body also cited U.S. President Donald Trump's executive order made on February 5th, which bans transgender women from competing in female sport. But I thought you said they're not trans. They're not. Neither Khelif or Lin Yuting claim to be trans women. Khelif, though, has since responded to the IBA's complaint, insisting that its legal action against the IOC has no grounds. We'll see about that. The IBA, an organization I am no longer associated with and which is no longer recognized by the IOC, have again made baseless accusations that are false and offensive, using them to further their agenda, she said in a statement reported by Reuters yesterday. And what agenda is that? For 2 years, I have taken the high road while my name and image have been used, unauthorized, to further personal and political agendas through the spreading and dissemination of baseless lies and misinformation. We don't know that the IBA is lying, but you can prove them wrong. You just haven't yet. Reuters have reported, too, that the 25-year-old mentioned in her statement that her team, while closely monitoring the situation, is prepared to respond with legal action of their own. You mean like when they threatened to sue J.K. Rowling and Elon Musk? How's that going? Regarding the IBA's eligibility tests, meanwhile, there is still little information to suggest that they do in fact offer a fair reflection of one's gender. The parameters are simple. XX athletes compete with other XX athletes and XY with XY. Look, we've already been all through this. If you're telling us that we can't trust the IBA and they're lying, then simply conduct a cheek swab test to refute their claims. It could all be so simple. The fact you haven't done it yet tells the story. Because you can make this all go away with a cheek swab, unless you already know what the results are going to be. You already know what it's going to say. And you already know what's going to happen after that, so you would rather endure these ongoing accusations that you say are false without having disproven them. So why did the IOC stop recognizing the IBA? Was it in association with this? No, it was in association with match fixing, corruption. A separate matter. Apples to oranges, really. It could all be so simple. It should be. Former champion turned analyst Tony Bellew said, I just want to know, was Khelif born a man or a woman? That's all I want to know. It all boils down to the chromosomes. Former Olympian Caitlyn Jenner, formerly known as Bruce Jenner, said as much. XX athletes need to compete with XX athletes and XY with XY. What is seemingly a battle for inclusivity for a substrata of individuals that may have been born with this congenital birth defect should not thereby alienate the vast majority of women competing in these games. It just doesn't make sense. It isn't ethical. What percentage of the general population even have this disorder that you're going to these lengths to accommodate them? 3%? 3 to 5%. And if you open a store and leave it open, it becomes that much harder to close. If this is in fact a case of two athletes with undescended testicles who may have been assigned female at birth but started to develop male characteristics when they hit puberty, we don't actually know what's going on here. All of that is just speculation. That's what some people think is going on. After all these months, when it could all be so simple for Khelif, a simple cheek swab can make this all go away. Yeah, but it could make that gold medal go away along with it. If what the cheek swab reveals is the IBA was telling the truth, Khelif's Olympic status may be rescinded. If you think things have been bad now, they can become that much worse depending on what the cheek swab reveals, and I suspect that's why Khelif hasn't done it yet. It can get bad for the fighters, Khelif and Lin Yuting, and even worse for the IOC, because they knew the IBA banned these two athletes, but they skirted around that. They ignored it. To a lot of people in doing so, they put a lot of the other athletes at risk. The IBA is holding to this, and they're not backing down, so how will Khelif respond? How will the IOC respond? The IBA haven't stopped coming after them. The Olympics are over. And yet Khelif states that the IBA have an agenda. What agenda is that? Because their story hasn't changed. In men's lightweight news, ahead of tomorrow night's fight, underdog champion Dennis Berinchyk won't be a punching bag for Keyshawn Davis. Dennis Berinchyk makes the first defense of his lightweight title on Friday when he meets Norfolk, Virginia's Keyshawn Davis inside the theater at Madison Square Garden. The 36-year-old from Ukraine won the WBO crown via split decision win over Emmanuel Navarrete in San Diego in May of last year. The odds makers felt Navarrete would be victorious then, and they favored Davis 25 this time too. Berinchyk knows he's been written off. Yes, what was that? He asked Boxing Scene rhetorically. It was even in Ukraine, where they felt Navarrete would win. You could go back and see the odds. I was the complete underdog, not only in the United States, but even in Ukraine. People didn't expect me to win. It's the same situation now with Keyshawn. We can see the future. I think the difference here is he's not facing a smaller fighter who's moving up in weight. Remember, Emmanuel used to compete as low as 122, 135 was his fourth weight, whereas Keyshawn is noticeably bigger than Dennis. Younger too, Keyshawn Davis is a high flyer and one of the sport's brightest hopes for the future. But in May, against Mexico's Navarrete, it was Berinchyc's night. As he raised the crown above his head, he finally felt that all my hard work has paid off. That was the main thing I was happy about. It's the only fight he had last year. It also sent a message back home to his embattled country, along with Alexander Usyk and Vasyl Lomachenko. Berinchyk has given boxing fans in Ukraine something to draw solace from through the brutal conflict with Russia. It was a good motivation for Ukrainian people to work hard in order to win, he said. The former Olympian Davis is an admirable talent. He is 12-0 and was impressive when blowing away Gustavo Lemos in 3 rounds back in November. But Berinchyk sees flaws, which he is not prepared to share ahead of time, and he plans to be a far harder target than Lemos proved.
He said that Keyshawn has lack of pro experience, and he gonna get in trouble when he gonna face fighter like me.
Yeah, a lot of Americans, a lot of people in the US think Keyshawn's the next big thing. I'm guessing he doesn't agree.
Со временем он придет к этому.
He said maybe, but he's supposed to prove it. It's gonna happen in time, maybe. Maybe not.
И не в этом роде. И не в этом весе.
And no, not in this weight class, and not this February.
They all just stand in front of him, and he's just worked on them like they're punching bags. The champion set of Lemos and Davis and other foes. When we fight, it is going to be different. Keyshawn has a lack of pro experience, and that means he's going to be in trouble when he faces a fighter like me. Is Keyshawn Davis the next big thing?
And what does Dennis Berinchyk mean?
Maybe, but he's supposed to prove it in the ring, and it can happen in time. Maybe, he said. Maybe not. And not in this weight class, and not in February when they fight. His defense is pretty good, but his offense, on the other hand, is not as good. We are working on the things we think we can exploit. We've been working on it for the last 3 months. The fight that top-ranks Berinchyk would most like is PBC's Gervonta Davis. Berinchyk hopes to unify. He believes he has around another 3 years left in boxing, and he sees Davis as not only his biggest threat, but the most lucrative option.
Well, somebody should have told him that Gervonta Davis plans on retiring this year.
I would like to fight the big names, such as Gervonta Davis and Shakur Stevenson, Berinchyk said.
Somebody calling out Shakur Stevenson. You don't often see that.
Then asked whether or not he would consider a fight with countryman Lomachenko should the gifted Loma choose to continue his career. Berinchyk said, "This fight would be big only for Ukraine, but not the whole world. We have a lot better names at lightweight than Lomachenko right now."
It's just a fanciful way of saying no. He doesn't want to fight Loma.
Yet another fighter whose career may be coming to an end this year. We'll see. Berinchyk does not believe he's hit his peak. He talks as though the best is still very much to come, but he has already accomplished plenty. He was just 12 when he was encouraged to go to the gym for the first time. "I was fighting a lot on the streets, and my mom brought me into a boxing school in order to spend my energy there instead of on the streets," he explained.
Accenting what I'm always telling you, that boxing is a poor man's sport in more ways than one. Boxing is a poor man's sport for everybody.
So I try not to throw up in my own mouth whenever they do a featurette about some tough inner city kid in America and how he came from the streets. Buddy, almost all these boxes, if not all these boxes, came from the streets.
Almost 25 years later, he is on top of the boxing world and will headline a big card at the theater at MSG. It's the dream of a lot of fighters, and now the dream is coming true in such an iconic arena.
He said, somewhat nonchalantly, of boxing in New York. And while he is motivated to do and achieve more, he is also happy to have reached such a high watermark in his career. First of all, it's emotion, the feeling of fighting, he said, explaining his enthusiasm to fight on. It's the fight itself. Then it's the belts, and the money is important also. But is he content with all he has achieved if it was to end tomorrow?
I'm content for 180%, he said.
Away from the manufactured controversy, before any of that even happened, all that stuff about the banana and the watermelon, I identified this fight as potentially Keyshawn Davis's most difficult fight, because this ain't no Gustavo Lemos. This is not a guy who's just gonna stand right in front of you and let you tee off.
This guy's got way better feet than Gustavo. Better maneuvering ability with that same aggression.
And he still has high hopes, though myself, I am a lot more cynical. For everything that Dennis brings to the table, he is noticeably smaller, shorter than Keyshawn Davis. Keyshawn has a noticeable height advantage, length advantage.
He's younger.
And he can punch. He's got power. I think Keyshawn Davis on points is the logical way to go. I would be thoroughly impressed if he managed to knock out Dennis Berinchyk, who's never been knocked out. He's never lost.
I'd be impressed.
I think at first, Dennis Berinchyk is going to be tricky for Keyshawn. I do think it's going to be hard to catch him.
He can move.
But he is also smaller, and he is also in his mid-30s.
Could this be controversial?
Potentiality of that was always there. We saw another episode of that when Devin Haney fought Vasily Lomachenko. Where Keyshawn is different is Keyshawn doesn't hit like a girl. Like a bitch! Ow! Now, as far as the manufactured controversy, Toprank released an official statement that reads, Toprank is appalled and disgusted by the actions of individuals that delivered that package to Keyshawn Davis last night. These actions are contrary to the foundation of Toprank. They There is no place for this in sports or society. Keyshawn has our full support.
Now, you guys know that I think it was Teofimo that did this, not Dennis.
The giveaway is the association with watermelon. That's an association that an outsider, somebody from outside of America, isn't going to know about. It's not an association that they're going to make.
A Ukrainian.
But a Floridian who likes to make monkey jokes and is all about monkey business, talking about monkey wants a banana, a guy like Teofimo, that seems more up his alley.
I mean, it seems obvious to me that he's the one who did it.
Ongoing debates amongst the boxing fans as to whether or not this is egregious. A guy who goes by the name Rid 'em Up said, "Your guy sent a racist package. Are you defending that?" To which veteran content creator Mr. Moonshine responded, "Mofo, if someone sent me a package of bananas and watermelon, I will be grateful. Emotional betas let dumb shit like that affect them. By the way, I love both fruits. I just did groceries and bought them."
Well, of course, he's going to say that he's balls deep in Teofimo's camp. He's practically a member of the team.
You have to be wary of these content creators that work hard to make buddy-buddy with the boxers in order to land exclusives. It compromises their objectivity.
Mr. Moonshine is to Teofimo Lopez what Ali Sekbak is to Javante Davis.
Reacting to Top Rank's official statement on the matter, boxing insider Rick Glacier said Top Rank should also be appalled and disgusted about losing the ESPN boxing deal, but no announcement about that. In truth, Top Rank did it to themselves. No ingenuity, cookie-cutter events, and in 8 years on ESPN, developed no pay-per-view stars. But Bob Arum's public spat with Terrence Crawford in 2020 and 2021 set the trend on what the ESPN Top Rank deal developed into after Crawford left Top Rank. A lot of not much. Things have changed a lot with Top Rank. It's Bob Arum's company in name only, now run by executives with no empathy for boxing, and it clearly shows.
He's a lot more critical of Top Rank than he usually is in that evaluation. Usually he sings their praises, not this time.
Is he right, though? Was it really their fault? I don't see it that way. ESPN is going through their own hardships right now, irrespective of their boxing content, like I said. With so many Americans cutting the cord and ESPN not able to benefit from basic cable packages in all the ways that they used to, they're feeling the pinch and thus trimming the fat.
They're supposed to be losing the UFC this year, too.
And I don't think it's because they want to. I think it's because they know they can't afford them. If a bidding war ensues, can they afford to keep that brand on their platform?
Do you got the kind of money to compete with Netflix?
And whoever else might try to bring that brand to their platform? I think there's a bit more to it than what Rick Glacier is describing. Terrence Crawford's spat with Top Rank and him leaving the platform.
Shakur Stevenson, too.
I think there's more to it than that. They've still got some young stars they're grooming, Keyshawn Davis among them, who's going to be in action this weekend. If he wins, he effectively becomes another bargaining chip.
Because they've still got a strong stable and connections.
Connections north of the border to Eye of the Tiger Management, south of the border to Zenfer Promotions, in the Far East.
Connections.
The U.S. broadcast rights to Naoya Inoue's fights, Junto Nakatani's fights.
I think they're gonna be all right.